Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Hwaye. Coming up in this week's edition, patches of stagnant, dirty water left behind as floodwaters recede in Pakistan are causing outbreaks of disease such as malaria, dealing a further blow to the devastated population. Sri Lanka's spiralling economic crisis is battering the Tamil community, already ravaged by decades of civil war. And staying put, we'll meet owners of China's nail houses who refuse to give up their land to developers during the property boom. The World Health Organization is warning of a second disaster in Pakistan after historic floods over the summer gave rise to a surge in waterborne diseases such as malaria and dengue. Unprecedented monsoon rains that started in mid-June triggered the worst floods in living memory, affecting more than 30 million people across the country. James Mulholland reports.
The floodwaters have finally begun to drain, but for hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis, the ordeal is far from over. They're still in dire need of food, shelter, medicines, and in particular, clean water. And in the worst hit areas like Sindh and Balochistan provinces, disaster is making way for disease.
Many mosquitos are here that bite and infect our children. We don't have clean water. The water's dirty.
The children are falling sick by drinking this water. They suffer from cold, cough, and skin problems.
In Sindh province, nearly 100,000 people have been treated for waterborne and infectious diseases. Dengue, in particular, is spreading fast.
More than 4,000 people are suffering from dengue. According to the data we are receiving, this is increasing by about 150 to 200 patients daily.
A third of Pakistan was inundated in the worst floods in living memory, which began in June. Millions of patients have since been receiving treatment in makeshift hospitals. But as disease spreads, health workers are struggling to keep up, even at this permanent facility in Karachi.
Out of every 100 patients, there are 90 suffering from dengue. Some of them come here with severe symptoms, the others with mild ones. There are a lot of dengue patients in the ward and outpatient department.
Dengue is transmitted by mosquitos. It causes headaches, severe joint pain and rashes. Thousands of cases of malaria have also been reported in Sindh province, while tens of thousands of people are suffering from diarrhea and skin diseases. Millions continue to shelter in open-air camps, and officials predict it may take as long as 6 months for the floodwaters to fully recede. People and livestock crammed together with no clean water creates ripe conditions for disease, raising fears of further outbreaks, including cholera and scabies.
It's been 7 decades since India constitutionally banned untouchability, the systemic discrimination against people belonging to the lowest caste. But the practice continues in various forms. The Dalit community, which makes up 16% of the population, remains the most marginalised group in India and faces daily discrimination and violence. Last week, 2 teenage sisters belonging to the caste were found hanging from a tree in Uttar Pradesh. A post-mortem revealed they were raped and murdered. 6 men have been arrested. The gruesome killing that shocked the nation was sadly far from being an isolated case. In August, a Dalit schoolboy was beaten to death by a teacher for touching a water jug. Our team on the ground sent us this report.
Shubham is still recovering from the violence he faced at school. He's not allowed to show the face of minor victims in India. He belongs to the most oppressed community in the country, Dalits, formerly known as the Untouchables. In April, Shubham was beaten up by his teacher on allegations of theft, which he denies. He says it's a common excuse teachers use to pick on Dalit students.
He beat me up everywhere, on my back, hands, legs, on my feet. He thrashed me for 45 minutes until I fainted.
On this hand, there was a fracture near his elbow, and on the other hand, 2 fingers were broken. He has a lot of injuries on both his hands. His back has several bruise marks.
That teacher was arrested, but it's not only the teachers who target Shubham. His upper caste classmates often humiliate him too.
They say all those who have dark skin are Dalits.
Why don't you complain to the teachers that they are calling you names and that it's wrong?
The teachers just beat us up instead.
What do they say?
They say, aren't you dark-skinned? What else should you be called?
Untouchability was abolished in 1950, but it is still widely practiced across the country. In August, a 9-year-old Dalit boy in Rajasthan died days after he was assaulted by his teacher. His crime, he touched a water pot kept for the upper caste. Rights activists say systemic discrimination against Dalit children have a lifelong damaging impact.
It does have a very long-time impact. It actually affects the psychosomatic development of children. Because, young minds, they seep in a lot of negative or positive vibes. So when they are not allowed to have access to water, a basic right or basic need of a child, so that does impact the child's thinking.
According to a survey by a private organization, Video Volunteers, around 50% of the total 200 million Dalits in India have experienced untouchability.
People in Sri Lanka continue to suffer the fallout of the worst economic and social crisis since independence. Among the country's 22 million inhabitants, the Tamil community is particularly hard hit. The largest ethnic minority, mostly living in the north and the east of the country, was still struggling to recover from decades of civil war that ended in 2009 before the current economic crisis began. Yinka Oyatade has more.
In Militivu, a town on Sri Lanka's northeastern coast, Singaram tends tirelessly to his vegetable patch day and night. He was injured by a shell attack during Sri Lanka's bloody 26-year-long civil war. 13 years on, and the effects of the conflict are being compounded by the current economic turmoil, the worst the country has seen since independence.
I have more difficulties than a daily wage laborer. Some of them manage to do 1 or 2 days of work, but I don't have that opportunity, do I? Nobody will hire me.
Singaram is one of many Tamils who are struggling to recover from the civil war. Militivu is almost entirely populated by Tamils, the largest ethnic minority in the island nation. According to Save the Children, the town is the second poorest in Sri Lanka. Over half of households live below the poverty line, and more than 20% of the population say they've lost their income due to the current economic crisis. With skyrocketing inflation and severe shortages of food, fuel and medicine in the country, many in the town are struggling to get access to basic necessities.
It's difficult because I don't have the means to buy a motor, so I bathe by fetching water from the pump and filling it in the tub. I only bathe once every 2 days because there's no kerosene. There's no kerosene at all.
Tens of thousands of Tamils fled the country during the civil war, and 800,000 more were internally displaced. The acute economic crisis has pushed dozens more to try and seek a better life in neighbouring India.
Now, if you have watched Disney's classic short animation, The Little House, you may sympathise with this next story. In China, some homeowners are resisting urban sprawl, refusing to sell their property to make way for new development. The result are so-called nail houses that are left isolated on construction sites and parking lots.
Nestled at the heart of this car park of an immense shopping complex. This simple house and this neighbouring 2-storey building are what's known in China as dingzhe, meaning literally nail houses. The owners managed to hold out against the bulldozers and cranes. Now the neighbours are delivery personnel and shoppers.
It might seem strange, but they've always been there. We're all used to seeing them. It's nothing unusual.
I think the owners refused to let them demolish the houses. I guess they weren't able to reach an agreement.
In China, before any house can be demolished, the owner must give consent and there must be financial compensation. 10 years ago, before this vast car park was built, there were around 10 buildings here. So why did these last 2 refuse to go? We went to find out. The houses appeared empty, so we called them. Did you ever intend to leave? Did you receive any compensation? Did they offer you a big sum? This woman lives in the 2-storey house. Like her neighbour, she does not want to give any details of the deal proposed by the property developers. We can't come inside, but she is willing to chat.
This year we didn't plant anything, but normally there are flowers here.
She says she's very attached to this house.
I'm around 60. I've always lived here. I was born here.
Chinese property developers have an expression. If you can't build on it, build around it. Like this house in the middle of a highway overpass, or this building completely encircled by a freeway access ramp. It's become a symbol of resistance against the booming property market and local city planning authorities. Hundreds of owners of these nail houses continue to hold out across China.
In mountain climbing, altitudes above 8,000 meters are known as the death zone, where the oxygen level is so low the human body cannot survive for a long time. There are 14 peaks in the world in that zone, collectively known as the 8,000ers. Fewer than 50 people in history have managed to conquer all of them, but in Nepal, Sanu Sherpa has done it not once but twice. His summit of Pakistan's Water-borne 2 last month, while guiding a Japanese client, completed his unprecedented double ascent. His family, though, are pleading with him not to attempt it a third time round. That's it for this week's edition of Access Asia. Please do stay tuned to France 24.
They observe. They contact us. They report, film, photograph. They are the voice of the voiceless. Your eyes in the far-flung reaches of the world. The Observers, a network of 5,000 committed citizens working with France 24.
One of our observers in Côte d'Ivoire, Gaspard.
Amateur footage and testimonials checked by our journalists and broadcast weekly. On The Observers, on France 24 and observers.france24.com.